What's up, people? So, to give you some context, this podcast that you're about to see was recorded towards the beginning of 2021, which was before people started receiving their vaccines. It is with my good friend Joe Breen, whom I got to know when I visited the Virgin Islands in 2018. This was kind of right after the time when 2 Category 5 hurricanes went through the Virgin Islands and had the most devastating effects. I basically couch surfed on the islands, and the house that I was staying at was Joe Breen's neighbor's house. And that's where I connected with Joe Breen, who has an amazing backstory that's really worth listening to. Not only is his backstory amazing, but what he tells us about the islands is also worth listening to, because there are things about the islands that I had no idea of. These islands have been US territories for quite some time, and they're very special and very unique. And we explore all of that in this podcast. Hope you enjoy.
And how is it right these days in India?
Oh, it's winter, and the COVID situation is a bit under control now.
Yeah.
The vaccine out, although it's yet being given to the, to the workers and all those people. And in a couple of months, we'll start getting it to the general people. So situation is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Soon come.
The older population is already getting it, right? Like your
no
father-in-law got it.
No, he got it because he works at a hospital. That's why he got it, because he's one of the people working at the hospital. So it will take a couple of months before the old people start getting it.
Right.
And Joe was just telling me, like, he's what, in the 4th tier or something? The law employees,
Yeah.
Lawyers.
Oh, all right.
We have I think there's 8 total tiers until it's just anyone, and we're about halfway down. I mean, for whatever reason, I guess they think the world just can't do without lawyers, you know. So
that's good. Good for you.
Bad for the world, good for me.
Oh,
quite specific, you know. Here it was what, like first responders, healthcare workers, older people, and then anyone. Like, it's pretty simple in a way, I guess. I don't know.
Especially when you say there's lots of people that are in no hurry right now. So, you know.
That's true.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that in Santa Clara County, a whole lot of, I don't want to get the percentage wrong, but a huge percentage of healthcare workers don't want to take the vaccine, or saying no to the vaccine.
Oh God.
Interesting.
That is strange.
In India, no one's going to say no to the vaccine. It's like, in India, no one even thinks about these things. Like, oh, vaccine? Okay, sure, I'll take it, you know.
Yeah. Is it free? Yeah, I'll go for it.
Yeah, I am not turning it down. I'm not trying to cut in line, you know, like let the people who need it, get it. But when they say it's my turn, you know, like, I'll be there.
So who is administering all this? Obviously, I think, unless I'm wrong, the Virgin Islands has its own government, right? That ties out with the US government. So they are the ones who are doing.
Yeah, we have our government structure is similar to what you'd find in any state, right? We don't except we don't have any cities here. We don't have that lowest level. So it's just the territorial government, the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands, and then, you know, we're not a state, but we sit under the umbrella of the United States.
How different is that from living in mainland USA?
Well, it's you know, the biggest thing that's different here is this place has only been a part of the United States for 100 years, right? So it's new. It's in the newest part of the United States, you know, other than some of the Pacific territories. And so this place already had its own culture when the United States came along. So, it's very different living here. But, the government, the experience as far as being like a citizen, like the experience as it relates to the government, it's not a lot different. We don't pay taxes to the government in Washington. We just use the same forms and give them to our local government. We still get some benefits from the United States, but not all the same benefits that people in the States get. Usually it's, we get most, like we don't qualify for the same Medicaid programs down here. We have a different thing that they've set up, but it's mostly the same. Technically, culturally, it's a lot different.
So before it was part of the US, what's the story behind the Virgin Islands?
It has been, so there are 3 main islands, and at different times they've been owned by all different colonial powers. For a long time, I think St. Thomas has had either 6 or 7 different flags over the last couple hundred years. So it's changed hands quite a bit. But it's been the Danish had control of it immediately prior to the United States. And then as World War I was happening in the United States, there was concern that European control of the Caribbean might lead to, if Hitler invaded Denmark, right, then he's got a foothold here in the Caribbean because he's, or not, it wouldn't be Hitler, sorry. This is World War I, the Kaiser, I guess. So in order to kind of protect the hemisphere, the United States purchased the islands for $25 million in gold.
That's so cheap. I mean, considering what you're getting, I'm not saying I'm rich, but like, that's cheap for what you're getting.
Oh, it would be a lot more today, but yeah, back then, I guess that was the thing.
Yeah, that's cool. So talking about like the differences between the Virgin Islands government and the US government, what did you guys get any stimulus with the COVID situation? Any form of it?
We did. We got the same as everybody else as far as that's concerned. So that was the check of $1,200 back in March or April or whenever that first stimulus package happened. We haven't received anything since then, but I guess that second round is supposed to be here soon. The $600. So yeah, that is one benefit that we have gotten. We don't get everything, but yeah, that is one.
And how do I know in certain other islands that I've been to, I'm not talking about the Virgin Islands, but they don't really identify with being part of the US. They consider themselves independent. Like a whole lot of people, Puerto Rican people think that way. A whole lot of Hawaiian people think that way. So what is the sentiment in the Virgin Islands towards being a US territory?
I obviously speak from a different viewpoint from, it's not like my people were, I've been here for a long time, right? I just moved here 15 years ago. So, I do speak of it, from a little bit on the outside, but I don't think there's very much a cultural difference. As I said, it's, we don't live our lives, the background level of what's happening in the United States is a lot lower here than if you were living in North Carolina or Chicago, where I was from. You don't, we don't talk about American things as much here. Like it's not, these islands are their own thing separate from that. And what's happening here is a lot more important than what's happening up there. Now, that being said, obviously, listen, we're all, lots of people here receive benefits from the government of the United States. They rely on a U.S. passport. They, go and serve in the military. It's a very, there's no question we're part of the United States, and that is one part of our lives. it's not as big a part of our lives as if you live in the States proper. Unless you choose for it to be, like it's, it's when you're living here, it's different. It's insular. It's away from all that. But, anybody who's from here, they're US citizens. They can go and move to New York tomorrow or wherever, right? I mean, you can choose to be part of it. But when you're here, like when you're on these islands, you definitely feel detached, or I have always felt detached from what's happening up there.
Yeah, and it's interesting also. Virgin Islands are kind of different, at least. I mean, I haven't lived on any of the islands, but I visited Puerto Rico and I visited Hawaii. And Virgin Islands by far was the most diverse in terms of all the kinds of people, like from different countries, different Caribbean islands. There were people with Indian ancestry, there were Russian people, there were people from Dominica, there were mainland people. It's just such a conglomeration of so many things that I think it's like, it's difficult to say this is one voice of one opinion, right? Because everybody has so much of a background. So with that though, like, do you think, like someone mentioned a story that one of the most devastating events in the Virgin Islands was in 2017, right? Two Category 5 hurricanes hit. And someone mentioned a story that that's when there was a little bit of a divide between people, that we are the locals and you are the new ones. What did you see, and what is the before and after of the before and after effects of the hurricane, like not in terms of culture and an outlook of people?
That was definitely my experience. That I don't think it had to do that it was a hurricane. It could have been, but it was everybody was extremely stressed. I mean, I'll just relate one story. When I was staying at a friend's house. He was off island. He asked me to look after his house, and I was more than happy to do it. He has a big house with a generator, and I don't. I live in a little wooden cottage, and so I was more than happy to stay there. But his roof, he lost his roof during the storm, and so as soon as, for about the first 4 days after Hurricane Irma, everything was closed. The roads are closed. You just you dig out yourself and your neighbors, right? I mean, like it takes, it was 4 days of cleaning up stuff around the house. And, in my case, we're in a little private lane. So we had to, there had been a landslide. So we actually had to dig out the road by hand, right? With shovels. I haven't worked this hard in so long, and the weather is terrible and you don't have electricity. I actually had a generator, but you're living under horrible conditions. So there's a ton of stress, right? And so the first day that they opened anything, they had a fire station open and you could go and get water and food and tarps, is what they were saying. And, and I waited in line in the sun, right? The sun is baking, and I was in line for 3.5 hours, and you get to the front and thousands of people, right? Thousands of people. Some of these people hadn't had water in 3 days. Now I did, right? I had a big cistern of water. I had a generator. I was pretty comfortable. I just needed a tarp. I just needed to cover up the part of the roof that had blown away. But some people haven't had food and haven't had water, and everybody is at their maximum point. And I've never encountered any kind of hostility, anything major, at least widespread, until like those days. And they were so difficult on everybody that it was just, you just had to, you had to be careful what you did. But there was no violence or anything like that. It was just, it was, you could get comments and, the stink eye and whatever. But it was all fine. As soon as things started to come back together, like I said, that first week was really tense, really difficult. After that, at least you could get into pattern, and life started to make a little more sense. You know, I mean, it was, the first week was insane though. I mean, crazy. I don't ever want to do that again. Never.
Yeah, I remember visiting, and you had shown me around the island a little bit, and there was this huge church whose roof was like a monster had come in and just snatched away a part of the roof. And also I think I went to St. John, and there were humongous trees just uprooted off the ground, like just lying
No.
there. It was just very eerie to see that. Like I cannot imagine what the hurricanes would have looked like. Like that would have been terrifying.
It's so while you're experiencing it, you know, like a lot of natural disasters, I guess you don't get to see much. You know, you're inside your house, you can't go outside because things are flying everywhere, and you will just get hurt, right? I mean, you know, you can't. So you close your doors and you sit inside in the dark with your loved ones, hopefully, or by yourself, and then, you know, 4 hours later, you open your doors up and you assess the damage, if the roof is still there, and, you know, everything else. And it's just, you know, it's not any fun. Yeah.
Were you by yourself or were you with your family?
It was myself, a coworker of mine, and she has a daughter and 2 pets. And so we had our own little family there, but they as soon as the storm was over and as soon as the airport opened, they left. You know, I mean, that was all they wanted to deal with, which I don't blame them. You know, it was, because it's a long process. I mean, it was 3 months before I had power back at my house, you know, and it was some people, I was one of the first people that I knew that got power back. Now I know that for a lot of people in the world, like, that's not a big deal, but when you've had power your entire life, you know what I mean? Like, the first 3 months that you don't have it is wild, right? And yeah, it took, you know, probably 6 months for life to start to get normal, where there's no curfews, you know. I mean, there's just power everywhere on the island, and even then, everything is destroyed, right? And then you can only start putting stuff back together, right? And we're still, you know, we are 3.5 years now after Irma, and the church that you talked about, the front top ripped completely off of this enormous church. They're just putting the front back on it right now. Like, I just drove past it the other day, and they're repairing it. And, you know, it's such a long process when everything gets destroyed and you're out in this little island in the middle of the ocean, and, you know, it's you know, we're definitely not recovered from it yet. And then for all of this, you know, the pandemic to happen and tourists to go away, it's been a very difficult year for the islands. But, you know, what do you do? I mean, you know, if you have to be stuck someplace, it's not that bad, right?
Right. So, given that there is this hurricane season, even though there haven't been cases where like 2 category 5 hurricanes happened around the same time ever on the islands, at least that's what I read. Historically, that hasn't happened. But now, do you think that maybe that there is a vision to possibly, you know, work through such a scenario if it were to happen again? Like, for example, new whatever, you know, buildings being made. There are no buildings, but new structures being made. Is there a thought, is there a vision there that, hey, we need to make sure if something like this happens, it's a concrete, right. Pun intended.
So they definitely harden it as they rebuild, right? I mean, our last major hurricane, our last category 5 hurricane in these islands before Irma and Maria was, hope I'm getting the year right. I think it was either 88 or 89, right? So it was a long stretch. and that was Hurricane Marilyn. I might be wrong on the year, 95. Anyway, it was a long time before I was here. So before Maryland, like for instance, there were no building codes, right? Like, we didn't have building codes the way they do in the States, or there was nothing, they certainly weren't enforced. Then with the enormous destruction of that hurricane, they said, let's put some building codes in, right? So our buildings are better after Maryland than they were before. And, when Irma happened, there were a lot of new structures that were just fine, right? And it was some of the older ones that were destroyed, that suffered the really bad damage, because those things do, as life progresses and techniques get better and materials get better and whatever, things obviously get stronger. They did things like they have these new telephone poles that are not just the old wood ones. They're made out of a composite, I guess, wood and plastic. And in St. John, where it's even more remote, they have these enormous telephone poles that, I couldn't put my arms around. I mean, these huge telephone poles that are supposed to withstand, 350 mile per hour winds, right? So the answer is yes. We're doing what we can, but it's a little place, right? And yeah, the storms are just they're so big, right? I mean, it's a lot of power.
Right. Sorry, I'm holding
when the hurricane was going on, at that time, did you feel like you could die? Was that the feeling, or you thought, okay, this is going to pass by? What was your feeling?
Yeah. I wasn't, there was one moment, it was when I really got worried, and I would say I was more worried because of my coworker, her little girl, I just had an instinct to, make sure she was safe, I guess. But we were upstairs in the house, and the roof started to breathe, like almost breathe, right? Like you could see it expand out and then contract in, and expand out and contract in. And soon, after a while, you could see daylight in between the cracks on the roof, right? As the roof would expand out, you could start to see daylight in there, right? And I was like, oh man, this roof is not going to last, right? Water is coming through at this point. And so then the house we were staying in has, what they call a hurricane room, and all, no windows, just the one door, a solid cement room where you can make sure to go in. And we didn't even go into the hurricane room, but we did just retreat into the basement, and all the windows were shuttered. So it was dark, we had a battery powered lantern, but no, actually, I'm sorry. That wasn't even, that must've been the second one, because we still had the generator at that point. But yeah, it was just seeing the roof start to move around, and seeing the sunlight through the roof. That was the scariest moment. I mean, that was the moment where, it's the only time during a hurricane I was like, oh, this could get dangerous,
So what you as you mentioned, your colleague left after that. That's all she could take. And I remember when I had come to the Virgin Islands, you were telling me about how bad the hurricanes were, and you were like, if there is another one like this, I can't be here. So what made you stay after 2 Category 5 hurricanes?
I mean, I've been here a long time. I've been here for 15 years. And this is where my people are, you know what I mean? Like I have a family in the States, but I've spent a lot more time with my friends and my, island family here. I have, this is where my professional connections are, as far as, it's not that I couldn't get a job if I moved back to Illinois, but this is my community. I do love it here. I love so many things about living here. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's difficult to answer why I didn't leave. I thought of it a lot. I thought of it even before, like I always think about, leaving, but it just seemed that in the moment it was like, hey, let's help out, let's start to put this back together, and then a day becomes a week, becomes a year, and here we are.
So you speaking about you being there for 15 years, you gave me your backstory, but can you give Benny your backstory?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I grew up there, and I went into radio as right out of college. And I used to do like traffic reports, like traffic and news reports on the radio. And I did that for a few years, and that was fun. But it seemed a little vacuous, or it didn't seem like I was going to learn anything else, about myself or the world or whatever. And went to law school. Actually, well, I went to paralegal school, and I became a paralegal, and I think I'd done that for about a week. And I was like, man, I'm as smart as any of these lawyers are. So I went to law school, totally on a lark. I mean, I took the preliminary test, and I got a great grade. And so I thought, you know what, why not? I'll be a lawyer, and which is crazy because, well, I don't come from, my people are like farmers and, blue collar, like laborers, like my father was a truck driver, I didn't know any lawyers, when I was a kid, I mean, I guess I knew there were lawyers in my town, but they're not my class of people, I mean, I didn't, it was a totally different thing for me. But, I went to college and learned a lot of things, and people said, hey, you're smart, right? And so I thought I can do this, and jumped into it. I loved criminal defense work. I mean, that's what I went to school to be, a criminal defense attorney. I just love the ideas of, that to me is what the law was for. I didn't want to fight over, whose fault it was in the car accident, or who gets the parrot when the couple splits up, right? I mean, like, I wanted to like use the law to like right wrongs and like justify people's liberty and stuff like that. And I became a lawyer, and I did criminal defense work for about 6 years. I did probably 100 trials. I mean, and then I just burned out, like crazy burned out. And I just got to a point where I was not happy. I mean, I was, like, I'm a pretty nice guy, and I'm a happy guy for the most part of my life. And I was miserable, and just turned into a real jerk. Like, I was like a super jerk to the clients that were paying me. And, my life was starting to get weird, like, so I just decided I gotta make some changes, and I had sold all my stuff, and I bought a ticket for Puerto Rico because I'd been to Puerto Rico for vacation. And I thought, you know what? Here's a place I can move to where I don't speak the language, where nobody knows me. I mean, like, it's still America. Like, I don't have to worry about, weird death squads in the middle of the night or something like that. But, I can go and lose myself and think about life for a while, right? I figured I might do it for 6 months or so, then come back to the States. But I just fell in love with the island life, and I lived in Puerto Rico for a year, right in old San Juan. And then, I ran out of money. I needed a job, and I couldn't find a job in Puerto Rico. My Spanish is horrible, by the way, terrible. And so I met somebody, and they're like, hey, you know what? You should try St. Thomas. Like, you would fit in St. Thomas. And so I got over here in February 28th, 2006. And I had a suitcase and a guitar and like $1,000 in my pocket, right? And, here I am, still here.
Wow.
It's an awesome romance. This is like romance to me. Romance, like couples to me. This is romance to me. Like, this is such an awesome, awesome story. Like, there were so many, like, I was telling my sister as well, like, and I told you, like, you were one person I met, and then there was this other couple. They had this like amazing story about being on the island. So I'm like, damn, I gotta do something with my life. Like, my life, you know.
it, I think that, I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of great like stories, right? I've done a lot of fun things, and I think at some level there's a decision that you make that, you know, you're going to live your life, you know, for, I mean, you're I guess you're just on the list of priorities that everyone has. One of your priorities is going to be impulse or fun or whatever you want to label that thing that says, you know what, I'm just going to do this thing because I feel like doing it, right? And you know, I'm 50 years old now, and 49, and I definitely feel some of that's gone, right? Like, you know, that stuff goes away. So, you know, I'm happy that I made those choices and did those things when it fit in my life, you know, like maybe it doesn't fit today. Like, I know I don't do that. And, you know, if I was that impulsive still, I would have lived in all the Pacific Islands by now too, you know, but it's still, I'm super glad I made some of those choices. Yeah.
So, do you envision yourself being in the islands unless a big problem happens? Do you envision yourself being there as long as
You
you
know,
live?
yeah, I do. Mostly, I spent a lot of time thinking about it this year. My family, you know, my parents are still alive, but they're older now, and they've had their own health issues this year on top of everything else that's going on in the world. And and so I thought a lot about this year moving back, what that would look like, and where I would go, and you know what my life might be like. Right now, I say that the biggest attractions here are that I really do have a, you know, a community of people that I can rely on. And if there's a problem, and I, you know, listen, I know that, you know, let's say a terrible thing happens. I lose my job. I get hit by a car, right? Something crazy like that, right? I mean, I, I won't be alone. Like there'll be people that will support me and make sure that I have food and rent and whatever while I recover. And, you know, that kind of community. Whereas if I move to wherever, I won't. It'll take a while to build up those things, you know. And I guess that's a super conservative, you know, avoidance of danger way to live, but or it feels that way. When I was just telling a story about do whatever you want to do, uh, but so I thought about it a lot this year. But I love the freedom of living here. It's very different from the States in the sense that nobody nobody gets in your way, man. As long as you're not hurting other people or getting into their stuff, like nobody cares what you do. Like, you know, like, or at least that's nobody cares. Nobody's ever cared what I've done, right? I've gotten to do, I mean, you just get to live very freely and a little bit outside the mainstream United States thing, which I'm not attracted to right now. So if I wasn't going to be here, if I felt, if a storm came and I had money in my pocket and I was like, it's time, I'll go to, you know, I've always wanted to live in the Pacific territories. I'll go to American Samoa or, you know, Guam or Saipan or whatever, right? I mean, and I'll try that for a while and I'll come back.
Mm-hmm. So when you moved to the islands, you said before that you had become kind of grumpy and stuff like that. What changes did you see in yourself after moving to the island? Like, and how did your values change? What realizations did you have?
Well, the biggest thing for me, and listen, this is not it wasn't easy. Uh, it's been a long time adjustment and it's still going on at some level. But my work used to be the most important thing in my life. You know, when I was working as an attorney in Chicago, and I loved being a lawyer, right? Like, you know, whenever I met someone new, you know, if I went out to the bars and I met at someone and they would, ask me a question about myself, the first thing I would say, well, I'm a criminal defense lawyer, like I'm a jury lawyer or whatever. First thing I'd say. I mean, it's how I define myself, And then it turns out that like it didn't fit in my life. And so when I tried to not define myself that way anymore, it just, it was really hard for a long time. I mean, it was so much the most important thing in my life that when I took it away, I didn't know what else was important. I mean, that was my thing. You know what I mean? It was who I was. But so I took the first year off. Like the year I lived in Puerto Rico, I didn't work at all. Didn't do anything. I had a couple $1,000s in the bank, and so I just read. I read all the great books. I would go and sit on the fort next to my house on this 500-year-old wall, right? And sit and look at the ocean and listen to the waves and like read the great books, right? And I read like everything fantastic, every great English language book that the San Juan Library had. I wrote one terrible book, and it really helped. That year so helped me straighten out, just like being in a place where, I was necessarily detached, where I was, I didn't have anybody to talk to, like I don't even speak the language, like, Puerto Ricans speak English, like, especially when you're living in San Juan. Like I lived in a tourist area, like they all spoke English, but when they get together at the end of the day, they're not speaking English, right? I mean, they speak Spanish. So there was no natural communication with anyone. I was very much got to live in my own head for a year. And that probably helped me smooth the landing out. But that's probably the biggest change, is just going from a person who was like career to now somebody who is, my career, it's I don't have work-life balance. I got life, and then I got a little bit of work at the bottom of it. Like I am, my scale is so far to the other direction now, but I have enough, and I'm having fun.
That's what I love about the islands. I remember when I went to Puerto Rico, this was, I think, in Ponce. There was this statue of a guy in shackles, and those shackles were representative of being defined by work.
Yeah.
But the values are that it's your community and your family and whatever, it was very community based. And that is what I kind of, being an expat in the US, that is what I kind of actually miss the most from India, like where, if you were sick, you would have 5-10 people taking care
Right.
of you. But in the US, like one of my friends back in Ohio broke his leg or something, and he went to the hospital by himself. And I was just like, what in the world is that? Who does that? Why is that happening? I couldn't understand. I couldn't comprehend why that was happening. That was just so bizarre to me, So I understand what you're saying, because I mean, there are days when you feel like, what if something happens to me in my apartment? No one would know for weeks, So I get it. Like the community.
Well, that's why this podcast is such a good thing, because at least we know more than it'll be at least a week,
Right. Why did she not show up? It's something. That's my idea of the podcast. That's why I'm doing it, so that people check on me.
Right. The title of the podcast is Welfare Check.
Funny. So now speaking about the islands, right? You lived on Puerto Rico and you also lived on the Virgin Islands, and I was just checking them out, and there's a vast difference in pricing of everything. Like Puerto Rico is so much cheaper and Virgin Islands is way more expensive. Especially it seems like after the hurricanes, I think the homeowners, home insurance rates increased so much that the rents are very high now. It's
right.
like one bedroom I saw for $1,200 to $1,500. So
we had a big problem. We had a big problem after the hurricanes in that So all our hotels were destroyed. Now, let's say of the 5 biggest hotels, 4 of them have reopened now, but our biggest one has not reopened yet since the hurricanes. And so when all the hotel rooms were gone, we also, at the same time, there were no hotel rooms. There was a gigantic influx of temporary people that were coming to work here. People that work for FEMA, people that worked for different federal agencies, temporary construction workers. I mean, we went from, tourism being our biggest industry by far to construction being our biggest industry by far, right? Because the tourists left and now we're a construction economy. And there's so many workers here that were working here temporarily, and all these federal people, and they needed places to stay, and there were no hotels. So anyone that had a free bedroom in their house would put it on Airbnb. And so now I think they said in the year after the hurricanes, it was a 600% growth in the number of properties on Airbnb from the Virgin Islands. Because anybody that had an extra room, I mean, why would you rent it to me for $1,000 a month? You can rent it to some federal worker for $250 a night. You know what I mean? Like, so, we had clients, people that bought houses just for the purpose of, they could use them for Airbnb for 6 months after the hurricanes and pay them off with that much money, because the federal government pays $252 a night or something like that for their temporary workers that were down here. Wow. So that's, so the economy, the housing economy shifted towards Airbnb. And so the housing stock is less. And so, yeah, rents have gone up a lot here. I mean, it's, I would say 50%, is not a crazy number, 25 to 50% in the last, since 2017.
Then why is there not the same kind of effect in Puerto Rico? Does it have better infrastructure, you think?
Well, I think there's a couple of differences. They're not, I don't know. I think maybe the scale of it is so much different. Puerto Rico had a very different experience than we did after the hurricanes. They obviously, Hurricane Maria was the much more devastating hurricane for them. But I guess I don't know the answer at the end of the day. I would say there's a couple of things. We have a different, I would think there was just a higher percentage maybe of people that were here, but for a shorter period of time. But I'm not sure. What, I can't, I think it has to do with the economics of both places. Puerto Rico's economy was having a difficult time before Maria. Puerto Rico's economy was, obviously they've got this enormous debt problem right now. They've had to increase taxes there several times. They weren't doing well before the storms, and it really damaged them in a different way. But I don't know as much about there, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, unless I'm wrong, like different things that you buy in the supermarket, there's also a difference in pricing between Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, and you were explaining it to me. Can you explain here?
Yeah. Well, we get all of our, almost everything that gets here comes on a boat that has to go through Puerto Rico. We have a little bit of homegrown agriculture, but it's frankly not a lot. We're a very hilly island. We're a little mountain in the middle of the ocean, and we don't have a lot of flat land. We don't have a lot of, local agriculture. We have some, not a lot. So everything has to come from the States, and has to come on one big boat to Puerto Rico, and they unload everything everything there. They put it on a smaller boat, and it comes here, and it even leaves us and goes down island, to St. John or places past where it has to go on even smaller boats. That's why you'll find anything that's heavy or anything that has a expiration date, right, are pretty expensive here. Milk is a very expensive thing because it comes from somewhere in the States. It only lasts for a week, right? And it's got to get here, and it's 6 pounds a gallon or whatever, right? So it's a dense thing that's going to expire. So yeah, prices are crazy here. It's our to feed yourself and to pay for electricity here is really expensive. But you never have to buy mittens, or snow tires. So I get to save on those things.
That's funny. I actually saw a meme where some guy had posted. I follow this group on Facebook, which is like, what's going on St. Thomas or something like that. So there is this one guy said, a girl asked me to take her on a date in an expensive place, and I took her here, and it was the water and electricity board, like expensive thing on the island, like that's the biggest expense, right? Those are the biggest expense. And I also think it's internet, which is like $25-$35 on the mainland. It's about $100 a month there.
Yeah. It is, the biggest thing is the speed, right? I mean, like I think we have a $25 internet plan, but it is, it is terrible, right? I mean, like you couldn't do this over it. Yeah, I think I pay $89 a month for, what I would get for $25 in the States. But it's there's no shopping around, right? I mean, it is what it is. And
so where do you save money? Like, where do you comparatively, like, I guess you don't pay state taxes and stuff. That's where I guess the savings happen, right?
Yeah, we don't have any type of, we pay an income tax, but that's the only tax. We don't have sales taxes here. We don't pay a state, we don't pay 2 levels of income tax like many in the States do, because we just pay what would be the federal share. We pay that to our local government. Where do we save money? Like I said, snow tires. I mean, rum is super cheap here. Cigarettes are cheap. I don't smoke, but I want to, just because the cigarettes are so cheap. Because we don't do taxes, right? Or we don't have many taxes on products. So, you can buy a pack of cigarettes here for, I think $3, whereas in Chicago it's 12 or something like that, right? So
huge difference.
Right. But I mean, in North Carolina, I guess they probably give the tobacco away, right? It's free there.
I've never explored cigarettes or anything like that.
It's tobacco country though, right? But that's one of the few, cheap things. There's not a lot cheaper.
Well, it's still island life, it's still great. So some of the things you mentioned to me when I was there, you told me about, like, every now and then you guys would hop on a boat and go to the British Virgin Islands. Sometimes you'd go to Richard Branson's island and see. I'm like, what kind? I go on a stupid, a forest hike in a near dumpster, and these are their weekend excursions. So can you tell us a little about those?
Oh.
And also that you guys have your own carnival season.
Yeah, it's one of the great delights here is, so St. Thomas is, just to situate everybody in the world, right? We're about 75 miles east of Puerto Rico. St. John is like 5 miles east of St. Thomas. There's St. Croix, that's about 30 miles straight south of here, us in St. Thomas. And then there's the British Virgin Islands, which are just off to the east of St. John, and then the island chain curls down. But I guess I'm just saying this there are within a 3-hour boat ride of my house, there are, I don't know how many, 20 islands, so it's a big thing. Whenever you can afford it, right? Get your friends together, rent a boat for the day. If you're lucky, you have a friend that's got a boat. If you're really unlucky, you own your own boat. and just pile in and go hop around the islands for the day, right? Like, you know, go to one island, have brunch, you know, and a few drinks, then go to the other island and go for a swim and a few drinks, and the other island where we have a few drinks. And yeah, those are like my favorite days. And it's just a huge part. It's so, I'll tell you a story. Me and my friends we were over in Joost van Dyke. Joost van Dyke is part of the British Virgin Islands. Oh my God, you have to Google this place. It is so gorgeous, right? There's only about 200 people on this island. And it's their only economy is tourism, right? They just have these beach bars on the island, and it's just beautiful, right? It's amazing. Like it's home to number one, White Bay, which is this gorgeous white sand beach. And they're famous for, there's no dock. So everybody has to just anchor your boat and swim in, right? So like the really famous bar there is the Soggy Dollar Bar. Because your money's wet, obviously. There's also, that's home to Foxy's. Foxy's is the Caribbean's biggest New Year's Eve party every year. Like people sail in from all corners of the Caribbean. There can be, again, this is an island with like 250 people on it. And there will be, for New Year's Eve, 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 people on this island. You know, I mean, it's a gigantic party, right? People come from all over the place. So this was not New Year's, but it was me and my friends. We jumped on the boat. It was Halloween. We jumped on the boat and we went to Joost van Dyke. And we're trying to leave at the end of the day, and my buddy's boat, his engine won't start. And so we swim back into the bar and we ask him, hey, listen, is there a boat mechanic around? Our engine won't start. And the lady like looks at her watch. She's like, oh yeah, he's definitely drunk right now. You'll have to wait till tomorrow. And so we get a room for the night and we go to Foxy's, which is the big New Year's Eve bar. We go to Foxy's and they're having a party that night because it is Halloween. And there's a little cruise ship, a windjammer type thing of 200 people on there. There's a little cruise ship in the harbor. And so all those people from the cruise ship, they're at Foxy's having a big Halloween party. And I was all in the dumps, man. Like, like the boat won't start. I'm stuck here for the night. I got to buy a hotel room, right? And, you look around and it's like, man, all these people paid thousands of dollars to be doing this right now. Like I'm stuck on this island paradise. Like, what am I worried about, And then it just changed my mind and had a great night, and it's, there's just tons of, you get to do, I mean, that's, I guess, where you get to save money. I don't have to spend money to go on a fantastic vacation. Like that's just called Saturday to me. You know what I mean? Like I can go to a beat, if you pick up on one of these magazines and here's a list of the Caribbean's 10 greatest beaches. Like I can go to 2 of those tomorrow if I want to, you know what I mean? Like, so I get to do that kind of stuff. And yeah, that is an amazing part of life down here.
And tell us more about the carnivals.
Oh, the carnival. Yeah. So every, it's a big thing here in the Caribbean, right? They have the Lenten carnival, the Rio de Janeiro has their big carnival, but every island's got their own, they're not all at the same time. Every island's got their own carnival, right? So we have, ours is in April. St. John has one in July and St. Croix has one in December. But ours is in April. It's the last week of April. And it's just a fantastic, lots of people that have left here, gone and lived to the States. They come back for a few weeks. You get some tourists, but it's mostly local, locals coming back. And it's just it's a party that lasts for, things last for a month, but for about 2 weeks, it's super intense. Like there is just events every night. They have what's called the Carnival Village, which is food and drink booths and a stage and, just people coming and, seeing their old friends. And it's just a fantastic time. It winds up, it culminates in the last weekend in which there's There's boat races one day. There's a day where they have the food fair, which all these booths all over town with different people make their specialty and then come and you can try everybody's food. And then we have 2 different carnival parades. There's a kids parade and the adult parade. There's what's called Juve, which is this wild tramp, right? Which is this type of Caribbean party where they're semi trucks, right? They're huge trucks and they have speakers just covering the back of these trucks. And one band will be on this truck, another band will be on this truck, and they just create this gigantic parade. And it starts after the Carnival Village closes at like 2 a.m. And then people go and they gather for Juve. And the parade starts at like 4 a.m. And they march all the way through town. Like it's done by 10 a.m., right? But everybody is loaded at 10 o'clock in the morning. Like it is, it's carnival. I mean, it's a ton of fun, man. It's a lot. It's wild. Like, you have to be ready for a party, but it is a super fun St. Thomas thing.
And does the carnival represent any kind of, I don't know, is it just a party or is there some backstory to like what it represents?
Well, it's I'm not a churchgoer, but let me see if I got the story right here. So there's Lent, right? Which is, do I have this right? So that there's like 40 days where there's the 40 days of Lent, right? Which is the Christian holiday kind of thing, right? And at the end of that is when you have your carnival to celebrate. I think that's what the story is.
Has it, right? Like
it's not a strictly religious thing now. That's the backstory of where Caribbean carnival generally comes from. But yeah, it's just a party. I mean, there's tons of cultural elements to it in that, you'll have calypso singers, right? There's a big calypso contest. That's when you'll see like the Quelbe dancers. Quelbe is the local dance form, West Indian. It's kind of like square dancing kind of thing, like you would see people do in a country western bar. It's kind of like that. But it's a local dance thing and you'll see them, that'll happen at carnival time. And there'll be, very much people bring out the traditional kind of garb, right? They have a plaid that they wear here is kind of like the traditional cultural dress. And so you have people wearing, it's definitely a lot of cultural food and drink and song. And yeah, so it's very much its own thing here. It's different here, obviously, than if you went to Rio. I mean, they're singing different songs and having different food, but everybody has their own little carnival. This one celebrates our local heritage and culture. Yeah.
Oh, that's adorable. I want to go there. I was planning one year and then plans fell through. Because tickets were pretty high and I was like, I could go to Hawaii for this price.
and it's a tough time to find a place to stay. I mean, it's because it is very busy, and it's very much I'll tell you this, it's very much a local party. Like I have skipped it as many times in the last 10 years as I've been here. Like another great thing about it is it's basically a week off of work if you live here, like because nothing happens carnival week, I mean, like it's just everything is closed. And so, you don't have to take any vacation days. I can just get, I got 6 days off right there. Right. So it's a natural time where me and my buddies would go to one of the other islands where nothing is happening, like we'll do that too. But so some, about every other year I'll be here for carnival, then I'll go away for carnival. And we're not having anything. I just met the other day somebody from our government's division of festivals, and he's one of the guys who's in charge of putting on carnival this year. Obviously with the pandemic, things are weird and it'll have to be all the same events, the singing competitions and stuff, but they're out doing it all virtual this year. So it'll be lots of Zoom calls, but
Can anyone? Is it a free Zoom call? I would like to join.
Yeah, of course. I'll send you a link.
Yay!
Send one to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll say I went to a carnival during COVID. Okay, I'm not gonna give anyone any specifics. I was just like, what? But I did, and no one got infected.
Right.
So, what are some of the, like, besides the hurricane season, on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
What are some of the toughest things you encounter living on living in the Virgin Islands? What are some of the tougher day-to-day things?
Sure. You know, electricity, you know, I mean, we have been lucky during this hour that, you know, my electricity's on and my internet is working, but we lose electricity frequently. I wouldn't say, well, it's close. I mean, I don't know. Not every week, but it feels like, you know, you won't go a time where 2 weeks passes where you won't lose it. And sometimes you'll lose it every day for a week. You know, you'll just lose your electricity, you know, for 3 hours a day, every day for a week. Like you can just never, I mean, it's very unpredictable, right?
And why do you think?
Why is that?
Yeah, why do you think that happens so frequently?
I don't want to say anything bad about anybody.
Yeah, okay, got it.
You know, I don't know.
Process issues.
It's not my fault if that's what you're asking. Well, I think that it's an old system. You know, we're a pretty poor place, you know, relatively, as far as the money that the government makes. You know, we make a lot of money off of tourism, and obviously there are the income tax that we pay, but we're still this island is it hasn't been swimming, you know, it hasn't been in the black in some time now, right? I mean, like, it's been a long time since this island was making any money. So things like that, and things like the roads, and you know, they get pushed to the side. So we have it would be nice if we don't have a modern system. You know, we don't, our electricity utility has like a lot of functions down here, and it's pretty beat up. It's not as robust as it needs to be. Comes from a previous generation, but we just don't have the money to fix it. And the local government seems to be content to wait until, you know, Joe Biden is going to cut us a big check so we can buy a new power plant.
Is there, and I know that there are some conversations, I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but like Puerto Rico possibly becoming a state. Are there any such conversations about the Virgin Islands? I mean, I don't know.
Right. There's been an ongoing legal fight for several years now. Not necessarily focused on statehood, but there are a number of court decisions from the United States Supreme Court going back to the teens, you know, 1910s, and what are called the insular cases, where they made a bunch of decisions about how the territories are treated, right? And so, for, you know, one example is the vote, right? Like, we don't vote for federal office here. Like, I don't vote for the president, you know. We have one non-voting member of Congress, but that's our only representation in the federal government. But we're U.S. citizens, so it's a different structure than most other people in the U.S. have. So there's been an ongoing legal fight for many years to at least get us a vote. And that's been happening for a long time. Before this most recent push in the last year, this most recent discussions of Puerto Rico statehood, I never heard a lot of serious talk about making the Virgin Islands a state. But a lot of people have talked about in the last year the notion of, you know, making this a combined state, maybe with Puerto Rico, you know, bringing us as part of that state. I don't know whether that's a thing or not, but there has been a lot more discussion in the past year than there has been previously. It just isn't a topic that you know, we're only 100,000 people. You know, that's smaller than a lot of cities in the United States, right? I mean, we would be by far and away the smallest and most remote of the states if we were to become one. So I don't feel the pressure's been that high for that to happen. Like I said, we've heard a little bit more lately.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And do the people like that idea, or do they like?
You know, I don't see a lot. You know, I see all viewpoints, I guess. I don't know if there's a deep consensus on it. I don't know if most people think it's really going to happen. I've heard arguments on both sides, right? There are a lot of people that don't want to see, you know, there's a viewpoint that I'm very sympathetic to, right? I mean, if I was my age, if I was 50 years old and I had been born here, to think about the fact that, like, in my lifetime, right? In Puerto Rico, Virgin Islanders have only been electing their own governor for a little bit longer than my lifetime. You know what I mean? Like, for the first 40 years here, there was an admiral from the U.S. Navy was in charge of this island, you know, for the first 40 or 50 years that it was part of the United States. And local people didn't have any say in anything. And obviously, just 100 years ago, when these islands were purchased, you know, you have to get your mind around the idea that, well, what does that mean for people that live in a place, right? And someone else purchased me, you know, like my citizenship goes someplace else. I'm a different person because of that, you know, like it's a very strange thing. And I'm hesitant to speak for, you know, locals on how they feel about this, because I've heard all the different opinions. I don't know if there's a consensus one. You know, I think that there is there's definitely an attitude here that I've heard people voice, that they just want to be left alone. You know, there's definitely an attitude that we should be getting everyone else what everyone else in the United States is. I've heard that attitude. You know, so it's all over there. I don't know if there's a leader, but there's a lot of strong opinions, because there's a lot of people who, you know, have you know, they've been subject to being moved around before, or people in their family has. Like I said, I mean, it was just 100 years ago. I mean, you know, and there's still people that were, you know, there's still people alive that were around when this place changed from one country to another. So I don't know. It's a sensitive topic, I think, here.
Right.
Yeah.
And in terms of the local government, right, the electees there, is there some consensus like, hey, it gotta be our local person who is born and bred here? I don't want someone coming from mainland and telling us what to do. You know, is that's the thing?
Very much so. There are, yeah, this is a very small place, and we tend to split our elections between the combined islands of St. Croix on one side, and then St. Thomas, St. John on the other. And because that's roughly a population split, you know, there's a roughly, you know, that's roughly equal. And St. Croix is a little bit further away, so they're got a little bit their own thing. So there are families in each of those islands who are very well known, right? And you pick up the paper and you'll read about the board of the local the hospital board or something like that, right? And you'll be able to pick names off there. Oh, she's you know, she's a blank. Oh, he's a blank, right? And like pick those. There are some families here that have been controlling things for a very long time, right? And that's not our current governors, and that's not to say he's part of that or anything, but he's part of the political establishment, you know, like he was in office before. There's definitely a I was going to say the word class, but it's not a class, but there's a group of people who very much regularly run for the same positions at the top of the government and control that all the time. And yeah, there's been in my time here, I'm not aware of, well, I don't think there's anyone who's ever been in our local legislature who's been from off island, right? It's all been locals. Same with most of the government departments. I mean, I'm having a very hard time thinking of anyone from someplace else. You know, it's very much a local thing, but you know, we're very much a local place. You know what I mean? These are the people who are like in any community. There's usually, well, at least like I won't say any, but like in a lot of communities, you know, there's a ruling group of people who are always interested in civic affairs and who are always on the boards and and they run the charities and everything else, right? I mean, it's the same here, except we're literally on an island in the middle of the ocean. So it's probably even more pronounced.
And is it that there's also like if someone is from a political family, if the father has run his turn, then there is a preference given to the son or the daughter, or are there things like that there?
There are definitely, yes. I can't say, there's no, I'm trying to think if there's anything direct. I don't ever remember any direct connection, but well, there's only one, and I can remember it was his father and he were both they were judges, right? Very well known, but it's yeah, there's definitely a lot of family things. It's not to say that it's bad, you know, I mean, but yes, it feels like there's a small group of people who are the movers and the shakers, and you know, not to say that it's impenetrable, but that is definitely the default, is that there's a small group of thing, and it's you know, the people that you see, the young people that you see make it, that you'll usually find out, oh, their father was whoever, like, not that, you know, he had some position or he's somebody you'd heard of before, you know, like it's very much a thing.
And since it's a small island, do you get to see them like doing grocery shopping or stuff like that? To see that?
Yeah, like you can see the governor at the grocery store or at the deli for having lunch or whatever, you know. It happens all the time. Like, it's so funny because I passed the governor the other day. I was driving one way up a hill and he was driving the other way, and he's just driving his car, which is like a Toyota Camry or whatever. Like, I don't know, I don't remember exactly what it was, but just a plain like car, right? Nice, you know, new, but you know, just a plain car. And then literally the next day, he's in a limousine, like with like security guards around him, you know, like driving past my office. And I'm like, wait, I just saw you yesterday, like in a Toyota, like, you know. Yeah, it's a small place. You see the governor at the beach or out at the bar at night or stuff like that. Like, yeah, it definitely happens.
Do you get to see any celebrities ever over there? Have you seen any?
Not really. You know, we have them here, but I've only seen a few. I saw when, you know, we have a few. We don't really have any locally that are living here now. I think maybe Kenny Chesney, the country star, is still living in St. John. He's had a house there for a long time. There's nobody else really famous in St. Thomas now, but you see them passing through, you know, but usually they're, you know, they land at the airport, they're whisked away on a yacht or whatever. Like, somebody just told me Mick Jagger was here a few weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
But he was here on a yacht, you know, like, so we didn't get to hang out, but you know, maybe next time.
Yeah, they probably go to the islands where the U.S. influence is lesser, so that, you know, they're not harassed as much, I guess. Maybe.
Oh, at this point, Mick Jagger should be getting harassed everywhere. I mean, come on, that guy is a star, right? I mean,
right. So in terms of the three islands, right, are there any, like, what are the major differences between the three islands? I know that St. Thomas is more of a, like a hub for all businesses. St. John is the quieter one. I never got to St. Croix, unfortunately. And in terms of facilities as well, does
Yeah.
one island have more?
So we are St. Croix and St. Thomas are very similar as far as facilities. Like, in fact, it's almost a joke that no island can have something that the other island can't. You know what I mean? Like, if they're going to build a stadium in St. Croix, they're going to build a stadium in St. Thomas. Like, it's part of the deal, right? Like, you know, so there's very few things where you'd have to travel to another island to get something between St. Thomas and St. Croix, at least. St. John's a lot smaller than both of us. You know, St. Thomas is in the neighborhood of 50,000 people. St. Croix is in the neighborhood of 50,000 people. St. John is at most in the neighborhood of 10, and it's less than that. So it's different. It's a very different size. They have a lot fewer. They don't have nearly the commerce or the industry that you'll find. St. Croix's got heavy industry. St. Croix's got an oil refinery. They have an alumina facility. They have, I think, another petrochemical plant. So they have the local, like, heavy industry. They have a much bigger, they're a much flatter island than St. Thomas. So they actually have our local agriculture there. St. Thomas is more commercial, you know, like we get more of the cruise ship traffic back when that was a thing. But you know, the stereotype anyway is that St. Thomas is the commercial island, the busy island. St. John is the laid back national park island, right? And St. Croix's got the industry, right? But also like great restaurants, great diving, you know, like it's a little more continental. It's a little more European than St. Thomas is. They've held on to the Danish heritage, I feel like, a little bit more. But it's they all definitely have their own flavor. It's St. Croix is a lot slower. I don't want to get in trouble. St. Croix is a lot, in my experience, is a lot slower than St. Thomas, just in that there's not as many things, you know, it's not quite as busy and running around as much. It's a slower pace, right? But that's good. And like I said, St. John is different. It's park and lots of tourists.
Oh, it has more tourists. I see.
It's got a very heavy. So our tourism is really centered around the cruise ships here in St. Thomas. I mean, we have hotels and we have Airbnbs, and those are very busy. I don't mean to sell those short, but cruise ships is like a huge thing here, especially when you're in the town area that I'm in. I mean, it's our biggest business, right? Main Street full of jewelry shops, stuff like that. St. John does much more, caters to the people who are going to get a villa and stay there for a week. It's not as much in and out traffic. And St. Croix does more of the stay there for a week kind of thing. They have a cruise ship dock, but they don't get nearly the number of stops that we do. Like they might, I think even once a week would be a overstatement, whereas we can get, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 ships a day in St. Thomas.
That's cool. I didn't know there all these different. I knew St. John was like just scenic beaches after a
Right.
I'm like, what is going on? It was unbelievable. Now, in terms of like during the COVID time, did you see more, or are you aware of more freelancers coming there, working remotely?
Oh, no question. A lot more. It is, yeah. Like in my neighborhood, just seeing people walking the dog in the morning and, you know, new couples driving around and stuff like that. Just in my little, you know, the couple of blocks I live in, there's probably 3 new people that are here. And yeah, it's definitely a thing. You know, it is, and I don't blame people, you know, like it is a great, it's a great thing to be stuck in a place like this right now. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like I can't leave and go and see my family, but you know, I can like go and hang out on a fantastic beach, like right down the street. So, I mean, it's been, listen, and the weather's nice, and you know, you can be outside at all times, you know, like, man, I mean, like, I can't imagine. I've been anxious enough in this environment, and everything we do is outside. Like all my favorite restaurants, they're outside anyway, you know, like none of them are inside because we have amazing weather here and people want to take advantage of that even when there's not a pandemic, you know, like, so it's so easy to live your life here and not have to worry about going inside. So yeah, I mean, like I have a friend who she owns a timeshare here. That's how I know her is as she comes back and forth, and she lives in New York City, Manhattan. And when everything got locked down, you know, she was there working, and, you know, she spent, I don't remember if it was 3 months, right? Like she didn't leave her literal apartment, you know, her 2-room apartment, like didn't get to do anything, you know, like ordered in groceries and stuff like that. And then she was able to come down here. She was able to work remotely. So she got down here and she went to her timeshare that she owns, and you know, she quarantined for a little while, but then was able to, you know, sit on her deck and work outside and, you know, not be stuck in an apartment in New York City while that stuff was going on. So yeah, it's definitely a thing here.
That's awesome. I wish I was.
Yeah.
Not before I get the vaccine, but I do want to make it out there. I saw some new listings, right? Like I was just checking out the prices, and now every apartment that's being offered, even if it's on Craigslist, they put out specifications that are very freelancer friendly. Like we have a generator, we have an air conditioner, we have strong internet. These are 3 things they always mention. And so that's what made me think that there's probably a lot of people working remotely from the island.
Yeah.
At least something is bringing money in.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see it'll be an interesting thing to see if people, how they continue this, you know, when they have to pay taxes. I mean, technically, right, you'd have to pay taxes in both places, I think, right? I mean, if you're just being here temporarily, that according to the VI rules, you have to pay taxes because you're here, you're doing work on the ground here, right? I mean, they don't enforce that. They'll never know, but you know, it is a consideration. But
I didn't think about that. I mean, the way I thought about it is like, you can say you moved there for a year, right?
Right, you can always lie about anything.
No, but like maybe you did move there for a year, right? That maybe I did.
If you did, it doesn't. If you're saying you're living there, then that's one thing, right? But just I'm here for 3 months is a completely different thing when it comes to tax purposes.
Right. But they wouldn't tax you until it's about 6 months of being there, right? Or is it for any amount of months?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
I thought residency is considered 6 months plus. Then you have to pay taxes. Was my understanding. I could be wrong. I looked into all these things, you know.
Right. I'll find it because it got to be a dispute. It became an issue during the hurricanes because we had so many people that were working here every day, but this was not their permanent home. You know what I mean? Like they would come here and live here for 6 months while they were working for FEMA, but they had no intention to remain here. You know what I mean? And so there was a little bit of a dispute between our local government and the federal government because local government said those people should be paying taxes here. They're actually doing work here. Right? This is where the job is being handled. and they're here, they're living here right now. And the federal government, you know, their policy was initially they should be taxed where they're from, where they're coming from for the temporary assignment. And I don't know how it ever got worked out, but I know it was a dispute. So I'll find those articles for you.
So this wouldn't arise if it were like something like Hawaii or something. This is because it's a territory that there is such a complexity. Because Hawaii is a state, and
right.
Okay.
Because we have a different taxation system than the IRS. Yeah.
That's worth knowing. What happened there, you know?
We'll figure it out. I know a good tax lawyer.
Awesome. I do know that's another thing I also wanted to point out. Like I was reading through different, you know, tax situations, and I realized that people who want to start a business on the islands get huge benefits, huge tax breaks from the local government because they want to encourage that kind of stuff. Same with Puerto Rico. They also give businesses huge tax benefits, big tax cuts.
Now it is certain kind of businesses. So we have what's here called the EDC program, Economic Development Corporation, I think is what it is. And it is specifically, you can't make anything, right? It is for administrative offices. And so what it's mostly been used for is for big companies from the States will open up a back office here where, for instance, Cancer Treatment Centers of America, right? They have hospitals all over the United States. They do cancer treatments. But their headquarters, the company that owns Cancer Treatment Centers, is located here. And so it's all administrative workers, right? It's people who are doing the accounting and doing consulting and doing HR and everything like that for the corporation, for the U.S. corporation, but their headquarters is located here. So it's basically a back office. You have to be a back office to benefit. I shouldn't speak that broadly. There are some different classes, but most of them are back office type operations. That's the very typical one. It's not any kind of business. Like you couldn't do it a restaurant, you know. I mean, like hotels can do it. Back offices can do it. I'm struggling on what some of the other options are, but you have to fit a certain classification.
And why is there such a specification? Does the government benefit more from those businesses?
I'm guessing it's just a trade-off when they decided to. I'm guessing it's a trade-off that has to do with how these companies are taxed on what they're doing elsewhere as well. But I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
They didn't let me in the room when they were hashing this all out.
You've been a criminal lawyer in the US and here. So what kind of, no?
I was a criminal defense lawyer in the States. I do not do that work here. I'm not a lawyer here. I work in a law firm here. So it's, here I work in a firm that does insurance work for two different lawyers. That's one of the great things about living here, right? Is so I work for one lawyer and I work for him for like 10 hours a week. And in exchange for that, I get this apartment, you know, like he owns this building. And so he just gives me an apartment in exchange for like a little bit of work every week. And then I work for another lawyer for money, cold hard cash. And we do mostly insurance related work.
Right.
So no more criminal. I couldn't, I couldn't do it. It hurt me.
It's exhausting, right?
Yeah.
On the islands, is there, like, what is the work culture on the islands like? Like, you know, on mainland, the work culture is like, be here on time. In 1 minute is like, oh my goodness, you were late.
What I always used to tell people here is, if you show up every day and you show up sober most days, like you're definitely gonna be employee of the month. You know what I mean? Like we're when I was very early on here, maybe I was here a year, I don't know, a couple of years. Went into the office one Saturday to finish something I hadn't finished, and my boss was there. Came in to pick something up, and he sees me, and he said, "What are you doing? Like, it's Saturday, right?" And I was like, "Well, I wanted to finish this thing, you know." And he goes, "Brother, nobody lives here to work on Saturdays. Like, you know." He's like, "Get out of here! Like, go have fun." You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying every business is like that, but yeah, we're pretty casual here.
Right.
Not a big work ethic kind of place.
Now, is there at all like a tech scene there, like a tech working scene, tech industry scene at all?
There is a little bit. There is. I know you've seen the co-working space that we have here, and it's been something they're trying to foster here. It's a little bit bigger in St. Croix. They have what they call the technology park, which is right on the fiber optic hub that comes to the United States to this part of the Caribbean, and it goes to St. Croix, and they're like right on top of the hub, so they get prime, like, choice internet, like if you work in this business park. Then there's businesses here that do financial, trading kind of things, right? And there are definitely some small tech businesses. It's not big. We'll see what happens. I'll be interested to see if it does disperse more. I mean, I keep reading these stories about, people leaving San Francisco and lighting out for, I read a couple articles about people establishing groups in Puerto Rico that were doing this, but it hasn't been a big thing in St. Thomas that I've heard of. A little bit more in St. Croix, but definitely Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I saw that too. There is a technology scene going on there. They have working spaces, and there are meetup groups now about SQL and Java and Linux. And what? So that's pretty impressive for an island its size. I mean, it's a bigger island relatively still.
Oh, it's for here, you bow your head and pray when the lights are turned on in the morning. So we're not so tech savvy here, right? We're a little bit behind.
Right. How is the school system on the island? What do you feel about
So we have public schools, and we do have a few private schools. I don't have any children, caveat. So it's all secondhand. Public schools are, for a guy that I grew up in a great public school system in the United States, small town, but I thought I got a great education out of there compared to other people that I met. That is not happening here. Our local public schools are not they underperform. I don't think that's a misqualification. It's such a mess right now. Like, we haven't rebuilt our schools since the hurricanes, right? The kids, well, I don't think they're going to school now here, but if they were, right now, the school, our biggest high school, our public high school in St. Thomas, is just a bunch of like trailers, like prefab buildings that they took over the football field at the high school, and they put these buildings out there because the school was destroyed or badly damaged in the hurricane, and they haven't been able to fix it yet. Education here is a problem. It's a big problem. So people that have money, that have a choice, send their kids to private school, but it's a significant expense. I mean, from what I know of it, it's definitely something we're working on.
And what about universities?
What about universities? We have the University of the Virgin Islands. They have campuses here in St. Thomas, one in St. John. They're supposed to be opening a medical school here in St. Thomas as well. It's free for anyone who graduates from high school here in the islands, can go to college there for free. We have some outside students that come from the States, but not a lot. I mean, it's a very, they're small school. marine biology is their big specialty, because obviously this is a place where you can go, leave your class and go snorkel on a reef, a few minutes later.
Yeah. How is it? What's the difference in crime? I mean, you've been in USA, mainland, and here.
Right. We're definitely higher here. We have a bad violent crime rate here. It is higher per capita than any place in the United States. San Juan is probably the closest place to us. There's a lot. This is a big drug shipment point. A lot of drugs come in and out of this place from South America, working their way up the island chain. There's a fair amount of human trafficking in and out of the islands, because we're kind of the soft underbelly of the United States. Like, it's a lot easier to get stuff in and out of here than it is someplace else. And then once you're here, you have a natural stepping stone to move it up to the United States. That, and I couldn't even say what the other causes are, but gun crime is such a problem here. We had 50 murders here last year, I believe, in the territory, right? That's in 100,000 people, 50 is a lot. Like, it is a lot. Like, it puts us up there, in the top, 25 or so in the world, like, this is but it's not, it is very much contained to, we have a serious problem with retribution killings. It seems like it mostly works in the drug trade here, but not exclusively. Certainly, there are domestics which turn violent, and there are, and it's life the way it is any place. But the biggest issue here seems to be among young people. A lot of it involves drugs. A lot of it involves retribution. You wrong someone, and the first thing they do is kill someone. And then, of course, someone has to be killed in retaliation for that. And someone is then killed in retaliation for that. And it's such a tremendous problem here. And maybe because of how tight and small and insular this community is, they don't always go to talk to the police about their problems. They solve them themselves. And so it's an issue. It doesn't tend to affect the tourists here. There's not crime in that sense. There are some, there are some tourists whose purse gets stolen or their rental car gets broken into, but that's pretty rare in my experience. But we do have there's a lot of violent crime here. Too much, way too much.
And more on St. Thomas compared to the other two islands, you would say?
Actually, St. Thomas and St. Croix, I think St. Croix had a really bad year last year. And they were definitely ahead of St. Thomas. St. Thomas and St. Croix are typically very close, though. But I think last year was an outlier, but they're very close.
Are the police really helpful if someone reaches out, I think?
Yeah, I had a generally good experience with the police. I had an issue somewhat related to my work, where I was a complainant in a case. I made a complaint with the police recently, and the detective was fair and responsive, and nothing became of it in the end. They were able to locate the person, but they decided charges weren't necessary. But, it's their decision to make. I haven't had a bad experience myself. We've had a number of experiences here of corrupt police, people, especially with drugs. It's happened a few times over the last few years that policemen have been part of a drug shipment ring coming in and out of the islands. But I've never had any personal bad experience.
Yeah, I read.
Certainly not one that I'm going to share on a podcast like this.
If you want,
try not to get me in trouble. Right?
Edit it out. Yeah, and also, okay, what are your, on a lighter note?
Yeah, please.
Let's end on a lighter note.
Education and crime are not the things to talk to me about.
So what are your favorite local dishes from the You can name a few.
So I'm a vegan, right?
Yeah.
I've been a vegan for like 5 years, and so my thing is the Ital cuisine. Ital is the cuisine of the Rastafarian culture, right? That's it is fantastic, right? Like it is so good. It's mostly local, natural, unprocessed stuff. Obviously, no animal products in there, but like a typical meal, it'd be rice and then let's say tofu or like maybe a nut-based loaf or something like that, and then greens and stewed beans and coconut dumplings, and it's just like fantastic food. Yeah. So that is definitely my thing down here.
What made you vegan, by the way? I forget.
It was like a little bit of Buddhism and a little bit of like environmental concern, and then I was vegetarian already for the same reasons, and once I tried being a vegan, it wasn't hard for me, and I kind of came to the mindset that if this world's going to work out, everybody needs to do something. Like, you don't have to do all the same things that I do, but everybody's got to do something for the good of us all, right? And it was a thing that I thought I could do pretty easily, and it fits with my life, and I love it now. Like I can't. Hold on, I shouldn't say. I have my faults, right? Like when I'm having a stressful time, like a bad gas station pepperoni pizza, like I definitely will dig into that, right? But that's not who Best Joe is, like, so, it fits. I like it. It makes me feel good.
Is there at all a spiritual community? Since you talked about Buddhism and stuff like that, is there a spiritual community on the islands at all?
Oh, definitely. The local population is very religious, very church going. So there's Christian churches. We have is it the second oldest synagogue in the Western Hemisphere? I think something like that. It's a beautiful place. And they have a sand floor. The story is that it was forbidden back when they first started it, and so they put sand on the floor so like the neighbors wouldn't hear them walking around or whatever. But it's a gorgeous place there, local synagogue. But we have people of all faiths here. It's very much, as you mentioned before, it's there's a lot of diversity here. So everything is pretty welcome. It's at the same time, like there is I should say, I haven't been to the Buddhist temple here in a long time, and I don't think it survived the hurricane. Like I don't, but we have, mosques and temples of all varieties. I mean, like we have a little bit of everything here. Yeah.
Oh. And is yoga a thing there? Are there any yoga?
You can do paddleboard yoga here if you want. Like just go out into the ocean and do yoga on a paddleboard. Like that's even a thing here.
That's awesome. Also, yeah, is weed legal on the island?
It's not, but nobody cares. It is. Right now, there's no up to an ounce of personal is fine, if I remember my law correctly. So it's decriminalized for small amounts. They passed a medical marijuana regime a few years ago the law that they passed said, first, we're going to institute medical. And then after 5 years, we'll have a review of how it's going. And then we might do recreational. That's what I recall the original law being. But it's been in place for like 5 years, and they haven't even set up the board that's supposed to make the rules for the medical side yet, like after years. And so will it happen soon? I don't know. I mean, our current governor has pushed several times to make it legal because he sees this as a revenue stream. But there's a pretty conservative religious undertone here with a lot of local population, and so far that has won out, that this is a bad thing. It would be bad especially for children, and so it hasn't made it yet.
And I know that. I mean, I know that people do it all the time on the islands, legal or not. It's done anyways, so they might as well. I feel, what is that song like? Don't criticize it, legalize it. That's
the song, all right. Yeah.
So like people are doing it anyways, so might as well. But I didn't know that there was a conservative population. Like, is it the local population or is it the mainland population that has moved and is conservative?
No, very much the local. Not conservative, we're not talking about politically conservative. What I guess I would say like morally conservative, right? This is a very religious place where people are, not only at church on Saturday or Sunday, but they're at church on Wednesday or Thursday or whatever as well. I mean, it's especially with the West Indian population. There's a lot of people that who I would call conservative when it comes to moral, ethical kind of things.
And so, since you also mentioned it's not politically conservative, I know the islanders are a little away from politics on the mainland, but do they take any interest on the presidential elections, and do they watch debates, and do they laugh about it, or are they like, oh, what's going to happen? How do they feel about it?
I will tell you this. The election of Barack Obama was a fantastic, gigantic, huge thing down here. I mean, like when America elected its first Black president, these islands are, I don't know what the percentage is, 75, 80, 85, I don't know. Mostly Black, right? West Indian is the term that we usually use. The population here was nuts. Like you couldn't walk down the street with somebody trying to sell you a Barack Obama hat or a t-shirt or whatever. Like it was everywhere. Now that being said, there wasn't a lot of, this is when it comes to, like I said, we're very like morally maybe conservative, but politically very, very progressive here. And so, I can't say that there was a lot over the last few years since he's been out of office. The what's happening in the United States is very much background noise here. It's not, I should say the background is at a lower level than it is when you're in the United States. Like you just don't hear people talking about United States stuff as much as they talk about local stuff, right? Like it's not that we're not disconnected. Obviously, anybody can get on the internet. If you pick up your newspaper, there's going to be a section in there and what's going on. But, the first section of the paper is not about what's happening up there. It's about what's happening down here, and that's what people are talking about on the talk radio stations. They're talking about our local electricity, not about Donald Trump, like it's, or Joe Biden or whoever. But we did really have a good time when Barack Obama was elected.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's a good time to close on a positive note.
No.
All right. Well, Shuri, when are you going to visit here? Wait till your sister comes down?
I'd like to join her.
Actually, the interesting thing is one of my colleagues, he's originally from Haiti, and he was saying that a lot of Caribbean universities are awesome. And
Yeah.
so I was into exploring it for my nephew, for her son. Like, I mean, I would have loved to be in the Caribbean I don't know how much studying I would have done, but it sounds amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it would have been a completely different experience than what I lived as a college student. But yeah, I mean, I love the idea.
Right.
Yeah, I'm completely into that. I mean, even if it's not too much of studies, but it's an experience. It's a life experience. I'm willing to give it a try for my son.
You should.
Yeah.
That's the kind
Well,
of
now you know people, right?
now you have connections on the island.
That's right.
Oh, yes.
All right. Well, Joe, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Ladies, thank you so much. Have a good day. Be well.
You too. Bye.
You too.
Thanks.
Hey guys, so if you liked my video, please actually go ahead and like my video. Also show me support by subscribing to my channel because I'm working so hard for this. And hit the bell icon so that you're notified every time I upload a new video. Thank you.